Alright, we're gonna do it. We're gonna get into episode 19 of Liam Small, Abridges, A History of Newfoundland by D.W. Prowse. 15 to 20 pages every day, or until the bars reopen, which isn't gonna happen anytime soon. I hope everybody is doing well today. Not too many cases of the old COVID on the go. Hope the conspiracy theories haven't gotten you driven too mad, and that all the screen time isn't giving you the insane headaches that it's starting to give me. Something I've found absolutely wild about this is just like screens. I've got 3 in front of me right now, just different lights, colors of lights, and candles, and all the beer probably don't help. Also, gonna just get on to one of these Coors Light banquet ales. They're actually... Coors Light's good. They don't... Or Coors Banquet. Alright? It's good. It's like... It's the beer you drink when you've just had all the other ones. Alright, so today we're going from pages 345 to 360. We are in the 1770s, 1780s for today, and... we're going to talk about the Americans and the French a little bit. So last going off, we were talking actually about Bermudans. Is that what you call them, Bermudans? The fishermen from Bermuda. And they were becoming a trade competitor with England. I also mentioned that the Bermudan ships were manned with who D.W. calls lusty Negroes, who were basically, they were very, very capable seafarers. And slaves is what they were. They were slaves. So, while I have that point there, okay, just want to make sure I get my starting point here. Good. Okay, so, yeah. So, in 1778, there's a letter sent to Palliser stating what the situation was with the... Pardon me. Ooh, starting early. Take a drink. With the Bermudan... people or whatever. He says basically that at first we weren't really worried about the people coming up from Bermuda because we were like, man, the weather is so bad here, the conditions are so rough. These people are from fucking Bermuda. There's no way that they're gonna stay here, that they're gonna take all the fish or cause any sort of problem. Let them come up and take a bit of fish. The elements alone will drive them out of here, no sweat, right? Turns out they were wrong, and they wouldn't. Well, yeah, they not only were they capable, but they were also really wanted to learn. They were capable, they were skilled on the water. They were more fearless. The boys, there's a story in there that goes on about how the guys in conditions that English fishermen would have said were too rough to go out to do the deep sea bank fishing. Boys from Bermuda were just fuck this, man, let's go. So they went under, navigated with smaller sails. They went out, so they were. They were braver, hardier. They went out and faster. They could get from Bermuda, from the Grand Bank or whatever, down to Bermuda in it was 6 or 8 days or something like that. It wasn't. They made the journey fucking quick and would get it done no matter what. Apparently, because if there was no wind to carry the guys by the sails, they would just make the slaves row at 2.5 to 3 miles an hour or something like that. I can't remember what the rate that they said was, but it was so when there was no wind, they wouldn't just idly sit there, they would get home, right? And which meant that the faster they could do that, the faster they could come back, the faster they could take more fish and learn more and be better. So eventually it became oh shit, right? So they were savvy, and again, slave labor, I mean, it's absolutely reprehensible and should not ever be carried out, but gets shit done, doesn't it? Right? Pyramids and stuff. Anyway, so yeah, basically the Bermudans were savage. Suck it, Devonshire. Here's the other thing. The Devonshire, the West England merchants were at a bit of a disadvantage competitively, because the thing was, with selling anything that the guys from Bermuda caught, they didn't have to pay their sailors because, of all the slavery and stuff. So there was way more profit to be had for them, and therefore more incentive and more so on. So the English, by the end of it, were kind of oh man, this is actually, okay, this could be an issue. So we were just all right, guys, you can't, this year you can salt your fish. This was in 1788. The Bermudans were allowed to draw their fish here, but they were heavily monitored. pardon me, they were heavily monitored. They were heavily monitored after that. DW also thinks that the Americans probably had something to do with incentivizing the Bermudans to come up here, to disrupt the English trade, and to help them be, sneaky with the smuggles, because there was still smuggling going on at the time. There's pretty much always some smuggling going. Like, there's always, there's these big picture things that happen, but the whole while there's all this other little stuff that's kind of going on, right? I've been sitting and just typing and reading. I'm gonna go for a walk tomorrow, or I don't know, do something. Okay, God, I hate it. My favorite part of the day is when I press that little square after this is all over. Okay, anyhow, enough bitching on my end. So just another note about our boy Montague. I remember him from the last, as it was a Montague. So he really did kind of like to do things his way. He used to invent laws and punishments, sort of at willy-nilly, you could be banished to Ireland for stuff, or you could have all your if you did something once, the second time you could have, your house and your wages taken from you, the third time you could be exiled from the island, or death penalty, so it just seems to be kind of a point that DW is making about that, the laws are a little bit willy-nilly, and we're going, because in this next little section, I think by the end of this episode, we'll probably be into, some more legal type stuff. So around this time, we have greater trade with Scotland and Ireland, in places like Greenock, Glasgow, and Belfast, with, we already have an existing relationship with Waterford at the time, and all those guys also found Montague a pain in the ass to deal with, so whatever was going on there, it just, he just wasn't that, he sucked. Moving on. So Montague lasted until 1778, and he was succeeded by Governor Edwards. And in the same year that poor fucking Governor Edwards gets in office, guess what happens? I'd also like to add this to the drinking game at this point. How about every time France declares war on England, take a drink, because the year in 1778 when he was succeeded by Governor Edwards, that poor bastard gets into office and France declares war on England. Back to this old song and dance. So France at the time had acknowledged, or they were earlier in acknowledging America's independence from England than England were in acknowledging it. And so with that, France turned around and said, all right, England, fuck you, and we're coming after you now. I guess because they figured that England was weak, because not only were they fighting the Americans at the time, now they're fighting the French, they were also fighting the Spanish and the Dutch, the strongest, certainly naval forces in the fucking, probably the world. I can't speak to what China's fleet was like in 1780, whatever, but in our neck of the woods, the big boys. So England had a lot on their plate. Now you're adding France to the mix. Apparently all the ships were called from St. Pierre and from in around the island, they were all called back to France, and where they were, targeted at the old mother country there, fucking Great Britain. On page 349er over here, it just says here, there's very little interesting matter in the records during Governor Edwards' tenure of office. He was very careful. He was a very careful and attentive administrator. All available means were used to strengthen the defenses of the colony. So now we're kind of off the fact that France declared war. So while France fucked off and we were sort of here, the English are at war with them. We're kind of like a loyal colony to them at the time, just getting over the American thing, and we're just kind of going all right, we're gonna, I don't know, let's build up the walls a little bit. So all available means were used to strengthen the defenses of the colony. 9 men-of-war boats, between 300 and 400 volunteers, and about 450 regular troops were under his command. Batteries were established at Kitty Vitty, Cuckold's Cove, Amherst Tower, Frederick's Battery, Chain Rock Battery, Fort William, Fort Townsend, and at Petty Harbor, and in the Tor Bay and Bay Bulls roads. A ship was moored at Riverhead to defend the path leading into the town from Bay Bulls. The volunteers, when under arms, were allowed rations, pay, and each half a pint of rum per diem. So that's a pretty good deal. Get your liquor on the job or whatever. Probably after work, I dare say. So that's cool. So a lot of volunteers. We were at this point, I suppose, after they take Ferryland and Bay Bulls 600 or 700 times in the last 100 years, and we're kind of All right, let's actually, for the first time, because every time we petition the fucking British government to come down and send us a little bit of defense, they're like, nah, you guys will be fine, and then we get fucked over. So I'm gonna hand it to Mr. Richard Edwards for really getting things going there. Congratulations, only took us 250 years. So moving on from that, page 249. It's a not COVID, smoking weed. It's noted here that Edwards was very grateful for the loyalty of our island. All the volunteers, everyone sort of pulling together to get the job done. He was apparently he was extremely grateful for that, and you know, everyone's petitions to defend the colony, everyone's standing up and taking some pride in the place where they lived and had developed the last couple hundred years. And also notes that officially on transcript there wasn't a single complaint of disloyalty or disaffection to the crown and stuff like that. So I guess that's good. It meant I suppose he had a good certainly good grasp on the people. Not a grasp, but he must have had the respect of the people on the island here. Let's say that. So this is a bit of a chunk here. All through 1780, St. John's was kept in a state of vigilant watchfulness about the great French fleet because they're on the go. The French fleet had 100 transports that had sailed from Brest on May 2nd. Its destiny, however, was the United States, not Newfoundland. During the first American contest, no foreign men of war, either French, Spanish, or American, made any serious attack on the island. Newfoundland suffered much from the scarcity and dearness of provisions, which had all to be imported from England, as well as coal. On the other hand, she enjoyed all the fishery, bank and shore fishing, without a single rival, because everyone else was too fucking busy. Prices were good, and the harvest of the sea abundant. On the whole, the wartime was prosperous for us. We just kind of just kind of stay out of it or whatever, just keep doing our thing. We just kind of kept up our little fishy, operations and let everyone else sort their shit out. So for us, not too bad. Yada, yada, yada. What else have I got here? Page 353. Where the fuck am I to now? Also, let's not forget, remember I said the whole time there's still smugglers and stuff on the go? Well, also, remember pirates? We had Turkish pirates, and we had American pirates, and we had English pirates and French pirates. Everyone's a pirate. But so they're privateers now. They're commissioned pirates. We kind of went over that before. So now the privateers, just because nobody was officially fucking with the island during the time of the American War of Independence, there are always a few privateers. They're just a constant. Again, they're just kind of always here. So remember, they're like mosquitoes, just sort of picking away at the island. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes it's worse than better or whatever. So right now, the pirates are kind of fucking with up around Fogo and Twillingate area, and these are American privateers. What would happen in the fall, of course, the English fleet would leave, and then it would just be the settlements left, so then the privateers would come in. So it'd be a lot of up the north coast, down the west coast, and kind of on the top by Fogo, Twillingate, Morton's Harbour, all around the circle, and so forth. Beyond destroying a few fishing boats and stages, they did not do much serious injury on the south coast. Some of the small outlying settlements were plundered by skippers who had been traders to the island. They boldly sailed their vessels right into the wharves and then requisitioned the inhabitants and carried off all the sailors they required. I'm talking about privateers, whatever the fuck. Several attempts were made to attack Carbonear and Harbour Grace, but they were successfully defended by the well-manned batteries on the islands. They seldom ventured near St. John's. One privateer, a brig of 12 guns, is mentioned in a letter from Renews, but she did not dare enter the harbour, which was fortified with 6 guns. So, privateers weren't fucking around with the Avalon very much. They tried at Carbonear, Harbour Grace, no such luck, so they're kind of staying up top a little bit. So, with that, I have a cool story here in the middle of page 351, so I've told myself. In 1780, one of the English squadron, the HMS Antelope, Captain Keppel, RN, he was cruising on the banks and he fell in with and captured the American armed packet, the Mercury, with Mr. Lawrence on board. Who the fuck is Mr. Lawrence? Anyway, with let's call him one Mr. Lawrence. So Mr. Lawrence is on board. As the vessels approached each other, a packet was thrown by Henry Lawrence, an American envoy to Europe from an American vessel. A sailor from the English frigate dived overboard and brought up the package, which contained the secret negotiations then being carried on by the Americans with France and Holland. By the smartness of this, I don't know, it says plucky tar, so I don't know if that's another slang shitty term, but anyway, by the genius of this guy who dove in the fucking water and the other guy who threw the thing in the water, England was put in possession of all the designs of her enemies, which definitely gave her an edge. I mean, you're going up against three of the biggest guys, and you just successfully managed to snag a package that was all the secret correspondence between America, France, and Holland at the time. I would call that a pretty good fucking get, if you ask me. What else do we have here? Now, in 1782, the preliminaries of peace between America and England started. Again, it's also worth noting that England were fighting Spain, France, and the Dutch, and the Americans all at once. So, it's amazing they didn't get obliterated. So yeah, that's coming in 72. With respect to Newfoundland, we were again in the negotiations of all the rights and stuff. We were... Okay, maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, because, okay, first off, DW, he spends the next little bit of time jerking off England, because after we got that package, he just talks about how England basically, the English lost to the Americans, or they at least made a peace treaty, but England pretty much held their own against the other three guys, so DW's like, yeah! So that's fine, you know, the spirit and the steadfast resolve of the old English boys and stuff like that. So, okay, now we're coming to the Treaty of Versailles. And it's in the Treaty of Versailles where there's some dispute over the fishing rights in the English provinces in Canada and stuff like that, right? So, fair enough, because, you know, it's tangly. New England have been coming up here a whole bunch for that, especially now with the French all tied up and involved with the Americans and stuff like that. But it does say here, with respect to Newfoundland, we were again sacrificed by Mr. Alan Fitzherbert, and afterwards, Lord St. Helens. So I guess these guys fucking sold us out too. Like, we could have had all the rights and everything again, and we just fucking gave them away. I got a little bit tangled up here. So there was some dispute over the fishing rights, and that's, okay, fair enough, but the English weren't having any of it. They were like, no, you're not getting fishing rights up there. But basically, it just says here, by the time the negotiations were over, the U.S. had actually acquired, in a modified form by Benjamin Franklin, who was doing the negotiating for them, the right to the fishery of Newfoundland and the Maritimes. It just says here, I just thought it was great. The American affairs would not listen to any of these proposals they dropped. They dropped Canada after their first interview, but they actually gained the right in a modified form to the coast fishery about Newfoundland and the Maritime provinces. This is the States. In a brazen effrontery and diplomatic roguery, the simple Quaker printer Benjamin Franklin taught European diplomatists, that's the word he used, English European diplomatists a lesson which they have never forgotten. So I guess old Ben Franco pulled a fast one on the English there in the negotiations, ended up getting the better end of the deal there. And then 352 and 353. Oh, don't tell me I'm making myself read all this shit. No. Okay, yeah, so there's just some stuff with the treaty. There was a whole thing where the English and French couldn't sort of figure it out. The French claimed they had the exclusive rights to the fishery around there. And then we were like, nah, but then we got to an impasse with the French. Then we were kind of like, well, we'll sort it on the next deal. Anyway, there was something where what was supposed to go down didn't go down in the reading. The king read off a different declaration and basically gave the French, fuck it, I'll read it. It is perfectly clear that the English envoy virtually promised to give France exclusive rights from Cape John to Cape Ray, but the ministry dare not put it in the treaty. The clauses about Newfoundland were most unpopular. Fox and Burke tore away every vestige of credit from the Peace of Versailles, and the ministry was turned out. This is the secret of the dubious character of the declaration. Nowhere does it mention exclusive rights, neither in the proclamation issued, but fuck, this is boring shit. Anyway, this was a hard few pages to get through. It was just fucking boring. On page 354, it says, this is a very... Okay, so there's a little dispatch here where we're talking about what's going on with the fishing rights and stuff in on the island at the time. So this is a very aptly written dispatch. DW says in his own words, "It appears to me, however, that after having carefully read the immense correspondence on the subject, that notwithstanding all the hair-splitting letters, the French argument that they have had prior claim to the fishing on the treaty shore had great force, and if they had been able to occupy every inch of the ground with their fishing operations from Cape John to Cape Ray, they could maintain their position. But, unfortunately for them, they never could do so. And the inexorable logic of events, the failing shore fishery, and the permanent settlement of so many British subjects on the shore, which was originally encouraged by the French, and the settlers persisting in fishing, has at present reduced the French treaty rights to mere barren privileges. They can have no permanent buildings of any kind. They cannot remain behind to look after their property and the codfish, and their chief end and aim has forsaken the coast, except in the early spring when the western shoremen snatch voyage before the French arrive, and in the autumn take another good trip or two after they have left. The assertion of French right has, in our days, become a mere dog-in-the-manger policy." I'm not sure what that expression means. And to this, the fact that they have virtually abandoned the treaty shore, and that about a dozen old brigs and 200 French fishermen now represent the whole commercial status of the French on this much disputed territory. So basically, the French kind of had it, and they let it go to shit. They just didn't really use it. They didn't stay. I guess they had bigger fish to fry. But anyway, they didn't kick around for too long. And it says here, "Whatever rights the French may have had on the Newfoundland treaty shore, they must have carried out under English supervision and control, either way." So it was under the English, like, they'd have rights, but it was still going to be tried and dealt with by the English. "Neither France nor any other foreign power can exercise coercive jurisdiction on English territory. It will appear strange to many French readers, but to many English readers, but it is nevertheless true that England has never maintained this principle until the last few years. Lord Salisbury was the first English minister to put his foot down firmly and declare that no French officer should be permitted to seize English boats, cut English nets, or to drive English fishermen out of their own harbors." So there you have it. The English are in control. The French have some rights to be there. Still not sure where we're at with the Americans. I guess they want it out. I guess the Americans could come. Anyway, all of it is going to be dealt with by the English. Did I just see my fucking little battery thing come up here? Oh, great. Okay, cool. 15%. That should be fun. I'm going to motor through these last couple of pages. Okay, so it's 1888 and 89. I don't understand. There's no way we just jump forward that many fucking years. What? Okay. What? "A more incredulous caricature of law and justice can hardly be imagined." Okay, we're getting on. Anyway, so around this time, there's like 13,000 people on the island or whatever. So yeah, now this is where DW changes the topic on us. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the court system and shit like that. "A more incongruous caricature of law and justice can hardly be imagined than the so-called Court of Oyer and Termine. The Chief Justice at one time was the Church of England minister, Reverend Edward Langman. Apparently, Langman was a dick. He liked to make up his own laws, he'd make up his own punishments and stuff like that. There's a couple of stories here, for instance. In the summer of 1784, a French brig was lost at Greenspond. Finding that the vessel must be lost altogether, some of the planters at Greenspond made free with some of the property on board, which occasioned the French captain to go to St. John's and complain to the judge, the vice admiral, that he had been basically robbed by 16 guys, and he pretends that they had plundered her ship. So basically, this French admiral guy was going to frame a bunch of planters or whatever, and he was going to totally get away with it until the punishment for one guy was actually going to be death, and then everyone had to go kind of, let's maybe just throw the charges out. So that's kind of how corrupt this guy was, and it just wasn't a... it's melancholy to relate that some of these poor men were tried for their lives merely for having a dozen spike nails found upon them, which they delivered up to the first person who appeared to receive them. The cruelty of these proceedings needs no comment. Had a court been instituted directly and a person acquainted with the laws actually appointed to try them on the spot, the injured would have been redressed, and the guilty, if any, would have been punished. And these industrious men, by being employed in the fishery during the season, enabled them to make good on their payments, paying the stuff back to their employers. Don't just send them away. You send everybody away, no one gets the reparations or whatever for the crime. But that would have suited the purpose of the Admiralty of the Court of Royal St. John's, where the fees were most enormous. On page 357, we talked a little bit about the crooked judiciary system. I mean, it's been off and on for the last 200 years anyway. Langman sucks. There's the French vessel in Green Pond, and then here, Ruth says there was not a single instance of a poor man recovering against a merchant before these justices, except one. So going up against the justices, it was basically a losing battle. Like, you're fucked if you're just a common guy. This judgment was given against a man named O'Driscoll in Bay Bulls in the matter of, so he was dealing with this fellow named Brooks Estate or whatever. He was going to lose. He was going to go totally bankrupt. Anyway, an old friend of his said, he just said, go get him, go plead to Prince William, basically. He said, go write a protest to Prince fucking William and see if we can't get things straightened out. And it did. Prince William got wind of the letter and came down and sorted it out, and the guy he had basically won his argument. So it took getting actual fucking royalty to come in and step in the middle of your little disputes to get any sort of justice for the common guy. Cool. The judges who compose... so here's a point. Okay, here's a statement. It's from 1784. Here's a statement of where we're at with things on the island right now in terms of the court system. The present government of Newfoundland, such as it is in the Admiralty, They send out an admiral annually for the governor who resides at St. John's, the capital of the island, during the fishing season, which generally lasts near or quite 4 months. So one guy comes over as a representative from the governor to be in St. John's. Okay, that's the first guy. His commission authorizes him to appoint the courts of Oyer and Termine, I don't know, and justices of the peace in any harbor on the island. These are likewise justice courts appointed by him and to be held at St. John's once every week. They were held twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, funny enough. And these, with the Court of Vice Admiralty, are the only courts instituted on the island. The judges who compose the Court of Oyer and Termine are usually the judge of the Admiralty who presides 2 or 3 justices, 1 or 2 merchantmen, not the least acquainted with the law or any form of it. So this is where all the corruption comes in, right? Because those guys go into a harbor and they have the power to appoint justices of the peace, and they could be fucking anybody. So literally, they have no idea how the law works. Their commission is during this session and renewed every year. So you can just keep coming back year after year. They have no salaries, and therefore we may suppose make the most of their places with power. The expense of the most trifling causes commonly £20, and the poor wretches, by paying it, feel such misery and distress, like the planters and stuff. The 6 persons usually on the bench of these occasions with the sheriff have each 2 guineas for every trial. The clerks, gaolers, and constables' fees make up the rest, so that rather than be at so heavy an expense to prosecute, the culprit often goes without punishment. That's good. The final result of all this cruelty and injustice was to create a terrible feeling of indignation against the courts. No shit! Everyone loves a broken system, don't they? So this is where we get to a fella named Admiral Milkbane. It's not a fun name. Admiral Mark Milkbane. So we talked to him, and Admiral Milkbane, he entered the government of Newfoundland in 1789. He was advised by his admirable secretary, Aaron Graham, to create a court of common pleas with regular judges instead of justices of the peace. It was a fortunate mistake, as it led to a more careful investigation, and I don't know how it was a mistake. It was a fortunate mistake, as it led to more careful investigation and inspection of our judicial system by the House of Commons. Grievous complaints were made by the merchants against Sir Mark's new tribunal. Fucking surprise, surprise there. Wouldn't want to take away all our good corrupt judges. And then finally, in 1791, the House of Commons passed Act 31 by George III, creating a court designated the Court of Civil Jurisdiction of our Lord the King at St. John's in the island of Newfoundland. That was presided over by Chief Justice Reeves and was only to continue for 1 year. Now, the next year, it was properly set forth by the 32nd King George III decree or whatever, as then they call it the Supreme Court of the Supreme Judiciary Court of the Island of Newfoundland. So they took away all those superfluous words, and that was only supposed to last for 1 year, but that continued until about 1809, where John Reeves again was made Chief Justice. He had been a law advisor to the Board of Trade. He was an admirable official, industrious, painstaking, firm, and resolutely impartial. The whole reformation of our judicial system is due to him, Aaron Graham, and Admiral Mark Milkbane. So with that is the end of today's installment. So we finally got a court system on the go, which is good. We finally, the French are mostly gone from the island. The American War of Independence is pretty much over, and pirates are still on the go. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in, for sticking around. I appreciate it. We hopefully only got like 20 more episodes left. I don't know. I really can't wait to do something else with my time. I hope everybody has a lovely evening. Get up, make yourself something weird for breakfast tomorrow. Have like a peanut butter and fish fucking sandwich for all I care. It's been a slice, guys. Now time for my favorite part of the day, and see ya.